No Doubter Nation. It is Thursday, June 23rd, 2022. It is another college baseball recap episode here on No Doubter that we're putting out. I'm your co-host, Travis T-Bone Lawfully, with my right-hand man, Barrett Boom Bostic, as always. Boom, how are you feeling this evening?
I'm feeling well. It seems like Omaha came, it's here, and now it's on the verge of being over because we are in the midst of the championship series. One one team you can sort of halfway guess, the other not so much, but it is two teams that start with the letter O as an O snap. Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. And I couldn't have predicted this. Not at the beginning of the year, not even in the middle of the year, and not even, when the regular season was done. But it is what happened.
Well, I predicted this on our recap last week. I mean, you weren't able to make that show, but I give it out to our audience here. That yes, I actually did predict Oklahoma and Ole Miss would be the championship matchup here. Those two teams would make it through the bracket. Ultimately, to the final here to decide the 2022 College World Series. I'm not excellent with predictions by any stretch. With our Major League Baseball show, I feel like those fall flat more often than not. But college baseball, which really is my thing, I feel like I've really just kind of had the engagement in it. We saw these Oklahoma Sooners take care of business and winning a series over our Red Raiders at the end of the year. I think they faced them like 5 or 6 times this year because they had one of those midweek games back in April that didn't count for a conference game. And then they faced them like a time or two in the Big 12 tournament. Got beat then as well. So really, like every single game except one, Oklahoma took care of business, and they absolutely got hot right time. We'll dive more into that in a second here. So we're Boom and I are kind of giving instant reactions here as the show begins. As of shortly after 5:00 this afternoon, so a few hours ago, Ole Miss sealed it up against Arkansas in a final elimination game. Arkansas the day before had squeaked things out 3-2 there. In that game, coming through the losers bracket, they would need to win twice ultimately to get to the College World Series. So they took it to another game today. However, Ole Miss came back this time. They got a full 2-0 shutout by a complete game from pitcher Dylan DeLucia of Ole Miss. This guy got out there on the mound and he just held it down the entire time. Then Arkansas never had a leadoff man throughout any of the innings during the game there. He locked it down on he locked it down on the mound. Defense and fielding was absolutely stout as well for the Rebels. So they take care of business versus the Hogs. They're getting to the championship series. This really is just a remarkable run here by Oklahoma and Ole Miss. Both these teams, the left side and the right side of the bracket, collectively now coming together to make the final for the College World Series this year. Oklahoma was, I believe, 18-12 in early April. They had dropped 2 straight Big 12 series to begin the year over Texas and Oklahoma State, and just kind of the way they were based on they had a good schedule. It was a good schedule, not a great schedule leading up to that point. And just, dropped a couple of key Big 12 series to start, and just where that Oklahoma program had been for the few seasons prior, having not made the tournament since 2018, head coach Skip Johnson's first year. It basically looked like if they continue that up, just being a 500 team or a little better than that throughout the remainder of the year, if we were looking at that Oklahoma team just as like around a 30-win team, 30 to 35 win team heading into the postseason, that would not be enough for them. But they really, they had some non-conference games around the middle of April that really helped get things solidified for them. With that Kansas series back towards the end of April, just had an absolutely offensive explosion out in Lawrence. I mean, obviously we're talking about Kansas, so it's not a top team that they're playing, but then that led into matchups versus teams like TCU, West Virginia, Tech, some of these really big programs to end out the year. Go on the road on the road down to the Gainesville Regional to play Florida. They beat Florida in the regional final there. Move on to Virginia Tech, take that game in a best of two, in a best of three. So they win that in 3 games out there in Blacksburg. That takes them to the College World Series. So this team came in just really, you needed to see something under 5th-year head coach Skip Johnson there. Yeah, having had a couple of near misses of the tournament in the last couple of years. The shaky starts at the beginning of the year. Like it just didn't. I think a lot of students were starting to think like, hey, is it time to start looking for another coach again? Um, much like the situation here with Ole Miss we're about to talk about. But they never stopped working on themselves as a team. They got healthier, certainly, as the back end of the schedule came up. This team has a really unique brand of baseball that I play that is both a combination of power and small ball. Their pitching has gotten so much better over time. It really is no wonder, in my opinion, that Oklahoma is ultimately going to the final here in the College World Series.
Yep. I think this of these two at the right time. Oklahoma was never really a preseason favorite, but they just kept getting the job done. It wasn't flashy, but you just, as the season went on, you're like, man, they're winning big games. They're sweeping Texas Tech. They're just getting it done kind of quietly. Ole Miss, on the other hand, they were a preseason favorite. I think they were pre-ranked number 3, or if they were not number 3,
they were a top 5 team.
They were a top 5 team. They didn't quickly fall into irrelevance, but at one point they did. But then
it was when SEC play came around at the beginning of April. Yeah. It's just like the wheels fell off. Like there was like by the end of April, when you looked at it, it's like, hey, they only had like a handful of wins compared to all the losses that they racked up. It was just like, we were looking around like a 500 Ole Miss team. It was like, what on earth here? Like what? Completely wheels have fallen off.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote them off completely. I mean, I was all hopping on the Tennessee bandwagon, but it's just, we took this team for granted, and now they're like, who's laughing now? Tywone Malone, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Two-Way Bo Jackson.
Yeah. Defensive end for the Ole Miss Rebels football team that also plays baseball.
Yes.
The man lives the no doubter way with a 400 batting average. That is
yes,
is ridiculous.
Yes. I mean, of course, he's not a mainstay in their lineup, but I mean, Hunter Elliott, 2.70 ERA, Dylan DeLucia, the man of the hour who Travis mentioned earlier, 4.07 ERA. It's been a group effort for this bunch. The starters have been clutch. The bullpen's been clutch. You got the offense making things happen. Tim Elko hit 23 bombs on the season. He's been a beast. And yeah, it's just, I can't. What I love about college baseball, it's not as predictable as Major League Baseball. I mean, you have to go through a lot of hoops to get to the final dance, and anybody can do it.
Yes. Yeah, this Ole Miss team comparatively. So Oklahoma on the other side of the bracket, like I said, they're this balance of kind of more small ball, situational hitting, old school baseball with at the same time power as well. They can go, it's kind of a wild swing. They can go from very like 3 true outcomes to just like the bats get hot and they're unstoppable like that. It meshes so well together. It's not like an awkward transition from one to the other. It's this like Skip Johnson just created this like incredible chemistry of everything that he has with this team to get to this point right now in Omaha. Ole Miss, on the other hand, like, you look at all those stats there for this Ole Miss team and you watch them play. I don't know about you, but it reminds me a bit more of, what like the typical Texas Tech identity is under Tim Tadlock. It's a very power heavy type of program here. I mean, yeah, when you look at like base running here and stolen bases of Ole Miss compared to Oklahoma. So Oklahoma, Peyton Graham, the guy that I put the guy that I picked to be the most impactful player in this year's 2022 College World Series, has 34 stolen bases on the year, and you've got guys like Tanner Treadaway and Kendall Pettis that have 24 and 22 respectively. But then with Ole Miss, TJ McCants is the leader of that team with 10 stolen bases. And then you've got Peyton Chatagnier or Chatagnier, however it's pronounced there, with 6, Justin Bench 4, Jacob Gonzalez with 4. I mean, this team gets on base, but it's by the bat,
Yes.
for sure. They're not they really
draw
they
walk
make a point.
kind of team.
Yeah, they're not a draw walks kind of team. They swing the bats. Obviously, that if you're going to swing the bat, you better make contact, so you can get those balls to drop. But I mean, they do that more often than not, and with a lot of power, to where you're also getting a ton of home runs out of this team. I mean, yeah, Tim Elko, leader with 23, Gonzalez with 17, Kevin Graham's got 11, Payton's got 11, Kemp Alderman 11 as well. So, yeah, those guys swing the bat. I mean, that's Ole Miss's identity. I think that's you've got a longtime coach, Mike Bianco, has been there over 20 years, I believe, at this point now. I think since like 2000 or 2001. And they've had all these, this is just their second College World Series appearance in that time there. And it was kind of after last season, after they had lost that super regional, going onto the road again. They've made a lot of regional appearances as a program, a whole lot of super regional appearances, but it's just always getting out of that super regional has been the problem for Ole Miss historically over time. But they did it this year, and they come into Omaha and they truly make noise. Well, the Ole Miss Rebels, the 64th team in the College World the College World Series field, not the College World Series field, excuse me, NCAA tournament field. Literally, a team that lost its last series of the year against Texas A&M, dropped the opening game against Vanderbilt in the SEC tournament to go home. And it was kind of, nobody expected them to get in the field. It's just kind of like, okay, yeah, Ole Miss had a great end to the season, but it wasn't, nobody was expecting them to get that. And obviously, there's a controversy around teams that didn't get in it, like West Virginia and especially NC State and some other teams that around Ole Miss just ahead of them that were also very bubbly, that that were certainly questionable. But Ole Miss has made the most of the opportunity, and they're and I mean, I think they've proven that. They were just. There was a reason this team was top 5 going into the year. The sheer amount of talent just across the board that they have, and how good they did in like a pretty nice non-conference schedule to begin the year here. But just how by the end of April was like, their athletic director is probably looking through his Rolodex right now, starting to make some calls, prepping for the next man to follow up Mike Bianco. But the Rebels put an end to that talk. Ultimately, they came in here and they proved that they belong with it. So it's a contrasting couple of styles here that we're gonna see in the finals.
Yep, it's gonna be a good one. Do we want to go ahead and give our predictions, or do we kind of want to recap the World Series so far?
Yeah, we can recap everything so far. It's like ultimately, hey, if you for our audience that hasn't really been following it all that intently, like, hey, how did we get to this point of Oklahoma and Ole Miss? So last Friday, a week ago, I think it was around this time that I recorded an episode to give predictions about the College World Series this year. And what I expected out of it. So this time last week, it was the opening ceremonies. The fireworks were going off out there at Charles Schwab Field in Omaha. It was Omaha Eve, night before it all went down. So last Friday, you had the opening games on the left side of the bracket. So that was Oklahoma and A&M, and then Notre Dame in Texas. Oklahoma would take care of business with a full-on offensive explosion with a little bit of an A&M fight back at the end to ultimately take that game 13-8. And then you had Notre Dame taking care of business 7-3 over Texas in that game. We move on to Saturday. you had them on the right side of the bracket. Arkansas just opened things up when in an offensive explosion over Stanford, 17-2. Then you had Ole Miss taking care of business over Auburn, 5-1 in that game. And then we start to move into the elimination games at that point. There, so Texas A&M, they was just kind of death by a million small balls in that game from watching it there. The final score was 10-2, but that didn't tell the whole story. That was, Charles Schwab Field out there in Omaha. It's a very cavernous park compared to the old home of the College World Series out there for many years, up until 2010, which was Rosenblatt Field out there. That played a lot smaller, that had more of almost that just like intimate college park environment, but with like a really like big stadium atmosphere kind of feel to it. Charles Schwab Field, formerly TD Ameritrade, very different. So A&M just like got on base. They had really great situational hitting, and they just took and they just absolutely wore out Texas's pitching here during that game. So A&M would win that game 10-2. Texas goes ultimately 0-2 in the College World Series. The first team to leave the CWS that year.
Yes.
So that's where my prediction, I had ultimately A&M would be the first team to leave the College World Series this year. Fell short ultimately there. It was Texas ultimately that would do it. And I didn't fully see that coming. I thought Texas, would give like a good little fight there, maybe more of like a 5th or 6th place finish this year in the College World Series, but it just wasn't to be. The pitching just ultimately, it was pointed out here that Texas did not play a single power conference team in either their regionals or super regionals. Albeit, they still played some good teams. Had a very good Air Force team, La Tech, and that Austin regional, having to go on the road, taking it to 3 games in Greenville against East Carolina. But yeah, no power conference exposure in the postseason to that point. I guess starting with regionals, because conference tournaments, that is technically postseason. In regionals from that point on. And so you have to wonder, hey, was that like a hindrance to them? Did they really have like an easier path ultimately to the College World Series? Not having faced that, I can't really say one way or another, but I think A&M just truly looked like the better team in that game. On the other side of things there, you had in the winner side of the bracket there, last Sunday, you had Oklahoma and Notre Dame going up against each other. Oklahoma would take care of Notre Dame 6-2 in that game. Just Notre Dame's offense really could not get anything going when they did get on base. Pitching was taking care of business for Oklahoma there. So Oklahoma would move on and knock down Notre Dame to the losers bracket. On the right side of the bracket, starting with the loser's side, you had Auburn that would take care of Stanford 6-2. Stanford had, I think, like a 2-0 or 2-1 game going through much of that one. But Auburn's offense at the end just really started to get things going. Not exactly situational offense, not exactly power. It just kind of lived in the middle there, but it was efficient and it got the job done for the Tigers there. So Stanford would also go 0-2 this year. They'd be sent home as the 7th place team in the College World Series. I don't think Stanford lucked their way to the College World Series by any stretch. But once again, I think it just was kind of a team that ran out of gas and just didn't have the horses comparatively to the other teams that they were facing against on that side of the bracket. On the winner's side there, you had Ole Miss that would take care of business handily, 13-5 over Arkansas. So then moving on to Tuesday here, we then had A&M that would take care of business 5-1 over Notre Dame there on the loser side of the bracket. So that would then send Notre Dame home. And then an offensive explosion once again for Arkansas, 11-1 over Auburn, keeps them going there. That then sends Auburn home for the year. Moving on to Wednesday, and this is when it really started to narrow down to setting the finals bracket. Oklahoma gets the 5-1 win over A&M. That sends them straight to the winners bracket. sends them straight to the championship bracket.
Mm-hmm.
And then Ole Miss then Arkansas, taking care of business. Ole Miss holding off a last second comeback and gonna run back in the ninth inning. There gets down to the last out there in the ninth. They take that game 3-2. And then, as we said earlier, Dylan DeLucia just has an absolutely legendary performance out in Omaha today. Full game, shutout 2-0 over Arkansas. Arkansas never got a leadoff man on base. They got some guys on base at other times, but just ultimately the Rebels just completely stifled the offense of Arkansas. And the pitching really truly is when the in tandem here. The pitching is working excellent with this Ole Miss offense right now. You've got lockdown pitching, you got explosive offense for this team, and so that tells the tale of why this Ole Miss team now is playing in the championship.
Yep, it's. I really thought Arkansas had the deeper squad, and they do have a good program, but Ole Miss is just that game. They shut them out, and I mean Arkansas went all the way to the bitter end, so they were definitely worth it. I mean, my preseason pick Stanford. I'm just glad they made it, but they ultimately didn't have a good showing.
Got the family homerism there because of your dad.
Yes, exactly. The family homerism. They didn't end up making it. I wasn't surprised that Texas didn't make it. I just thought that they have too many holes. A&M, I thought they were going to be a really good, Cinderella story, but alas.
You finished top 4 in the College World Series. I mean, that's you get back to it here for the first time in 5 years. First year under Jim Schlossnagle, here that he takes them all the way to the College World Series. I mean, I don't see that as a failure by any stretch for A&M. They just didn't quite. I don't think they quite had a team built in the way that it needed to be, especially going up against a club like Oklahoma. A&M just really leaned on their pitching. Their offense could go kind of silent at times. They really, if the small ball wasn't there, you just didn't have a power team that could that could help it out as well. So I think that's why that ultimately happened with A&M.
Yeah, but they have something to go off of. Notre Dame surprised everyone. I just think they could have been a really cool Cinderella story because nobody really gives them credit. Everybody raves about their football team, but I mean, we've been keeping a pulse on them the whole year. But yeah, ultimately, here we are, Ole Miss, Oklahoma, and I guess we might as well just get into it. At this point, I'm gonna have to give the edge to Oklahoma. I just think that they just, as of recent, ever since their ascendancy, they've been doing too many good things, too good. And with Ole Miss having to have gone so far, I mean, think about it. Oklahoma stopped playing yesterday. So again, it's an extra day of rest. But
was it yesterday? It was.
Yes. So they get an extra day of rest. It could make a difference. But both teams rest tomorrow, and then they play their first game on Saturday. So will that one extra day of rest work in Oklahoma's favor? It could. With Ole Miss and correct me if I'm wrong. The pitcher today was Dylan DeLucia, correct?
Yep, Dylan DeLucia.
So Dylan DeLucia. So if they used Dylan today, I mean, he's just going to have to pull a rabbit out of his hat and try to pitch on short rest. They might probably rest him for game 1. If they win game 1, they can just keep resting him. But if they lose game 1, then he might have to just go, and just pull, muscle it in for game 2. I just think, and maybe I'm writing too much on the whole rest deal, but even if that weren't an issue, let's just say both teams had equal days of rest. I still think Oklahoma just has the complete squad. Trevin Michael, Jake Bennett on the pitching end.
Yep. Trevin Michael is a fantastic closer. Like he is just
Those two, that guy can go
your game is
strikes.
over when he gets out there on the mound. Like it's
Seriously. Oh yeah. I mean, come on. Tanner Treadway, Peyton Graham, on the offensive side of the field, Jackson Nicholas. I mean, Calhoun. I just, I, I think Oklahoma. I mean, I can't tell whether it's 2 or 3 games, and I think it'll be 3. Oklahoma in 3. I think Ole Miss will make it interesting, but ultimately, that's my prediction.
boom. I have to say that your predictions very much are close to mine here. I have it. I have an N3 as well. And it's like, man, going into this episode, what I watched over the past couple days, I had been very tempted to start. I'm like watching the TV. I'm seeing this Ole Miss team play. I'm like, man, do I change it now from Oklahoma in 3 to Ole Miss in 3? Like that was I
Yeah.
started to have those feelings there about it. But I believe, yes, either way, it's going to 3 games. But I believe that Oklahoma has the edge because you said it's the more complete team.
Mhm.
I think so. Well, this offensive, well, I feel like I feel like the pitching has become more of like a defining factor to really complement this multifaceted offensive approach that we see from Oklahoma. That has done them really well, not just in the regular season, but the postseason. So you have the proof of it that really works well for them. While, we're seeing this team, I think this Ole Miss team evolve as well and continue to get better and kind of rekindle that like very early season magic that they had just on the level here, obviously in the postseason. I believe that Ole Miss, how do I say this? They, it's less of this like fine dance that they that they have going here with it. Of it's more of kind of like a trade off, and those things, even if one area is more weaker, the other area can kind of step up. The facets of this team just don't go quite in tandem with each other comparatively that I would say an Oklahoma team does. So that's why I give the edge. But regardless, I think these are going to be close games. They're going to be interesting games.
Yeah.
If one team scores a lot of runs in one or more of these games, the other team is going to do the same. If it's a low scoring game, then the other team is going to match the intensity as well. Both pitching and defense. Like this is going to be such a great, albeit these different playing styles, a complementary matchup in terms of like what I think will make it for a really interesting College World Series final. But I'm like you, I give the edge still ultimately to Oklahoma at this point.
Oklahoma in 3.
Oklahoma in 3. That's
There
correct.
you go.
They will get their third
No,
College World Series title in school history.
there you go. No differentiation with us. We have all of our eggs in one basket, and we will ultimately end up seeing it. But it is good. That stadium is so beautiful. It's so cool to watch games there. It's such an icon of the city, of the state, and they turn
It's
up.
outside of Nebraska football. It's probably one of the most exciting things that happens in the state of Nebraska every year.
Well, I mean, Nebraska had their sellout record at their football stadium. It did get broken during COVID, but that was the only reason why it got broken. COVID. So they show up for sporting events in the great state of Nebraska.
Because what else happens there?
I knew it. We're gonna pound on it. Hey,
we're gonna get a bunch of hate mail all of a sudden from
yes. Well,
so
bring the hate mail. Leave your hate comments. We'd rather have that than no comments. So anyway, I'll be regretting that. But anyway, man, it's almost over. But we just have one more weekend. We will recap what happens sometime next weekend. But anyway, man, it's almost so. There you go. Thank y'all so much for joining us for this college baseball ride. It's fun. If you haven't watched, I mean, come on, it's a championship game. You got to tune in. Watch Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. At least watch a little joining us and subscribe to our channel, both YouTube um, and on the podcast, so you don't miss out. We're going to recap what happened next week, and we are going to continue our Major League Baseball coverage because it goes all the way to the end of October. So it's just no matter what, all baseball all day long. Interviews coming up. Join the club, guys. Leave us a 5-star review if you enjoyed the show. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at No Doubter Pod. You can follow me at Boomboss21 and Travis Slofley at Travis Slofley on Twitter. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see our beautiful faces, see us do some porn scores. We will definitely do a porn score when the World Series is over to celebrate. So you will not want to miss out on that.
We got to bring that back.
Yes, we will celebrate the end of the college season. So you won't want to miss that. See our beers when we drink it. See them when we describe them. And you can only do that by our YouTube channel. If you've been listening to us for a while, we would greatly consider it if you consider joining our Patreon. $2, $5, $10. You become part of a community. You get something in return the more you give, and it's just we really appreciate it. We want to give a shout out to our longest standing patron, Tad Bostic, and Patreon producer, Don Hale. You two make the show possible. Y'all are awesome. We appreciate you guys so much. And then lastly, check out our merch store, guys. We got some sick gear, mugs, t-shirts, hoodies, baseball shirts, anything you can ever want. There's so many different options, stuff for the whole family. And I would know because I have stuff for my whole family. I got babies all the way up into me, the dad bod. It all works. You can find something. Check it out. All those links in the description below. T-Bone, land the plane.
Friends, you might not know it over the last couple of games that have happened here in the College World Series, but by and large, it's been an offensive explosion for the first time in the College World Series in a good while out there at Charles Schwab Field, or as the checkbox, as some might call it out there. And so, the checkbox is cooking, and the offense, the offense has been aplenty so far that has made some fun College World Series action. So you know what? Just remember, your everyday life, you can live what you're doing like you're at the College World Series, like you're on top of the world. You can go out there and you can bat 400 and always swing the fences in all that you do. And you know what? It's probably going to turn out pretty well for you. We love you guys. We'll see y'all again very, very soon. Take care.
Take care, y'all.